Welcome back to the CoDaKrew podcast. I said last episode that we're going to start doing our match week quickfire reviews, and here we go with that. Before we get into the games, though, I have something that I need to say, and that is that Thomas Frank has finally, after months of mediocrity, been sacked in the morning. Now, this comes off the back of continuous terrible performances by Tottenham, a squad that at the start of the season were hoping to finish upper mid table, maybe challenge for a UCL spot potentially if things went well. But right now, more than two-thirds of the way through the Premier League season, they see themselves in 16th place and just 5 points ahead of the drop zone. They are seriously in a relegation battle. And we're going to talk about them a little bit more later, but I just have to preface that, we did say, both me and my co-host, we both said Ange Postecoglou should not have been fired, and honestly, I feel like we're a little bit vindicated by this decision because Thomas Frank came in. He was supposed to be the manager for stability. He has the Premier League experience managing Brentford. But look at where they are, man. It has clearly not panned out, and now Tottenham are going to be forced to scramble to either find a replacement or find an interim manager. Probably an interim, because I don't know who the hell is going to want to enter this mess fighting for relegation for the remaining 12 matches in the, at least, Premier League season for Tottenham. But that being said, we're now going to get into our regularly scheduled match week review, and we're starting with the first game of the week, Chelsea vs Leeds. Now, I said that Chelsea were going to win this one 2-1, and my logic was that Chelsea, especially under Rosenior, have a huge tendency to try to rotate members of their squad against sort of weaker teams, and that I think is what we saw here. We saw notably some changes to the back line, and as for Leeds, they made some changes as well, but I expected that because of this, Chelsea were going to have a little bit more of a tempered performance. Now, what ended up happening in the first half was my prediction was actually looking pretty spot on, because in the beginning, João Pedro, has another one of his great performances, as per usual, gets the first goal off of a great assist by Cole Palmer as well. And then in the second half, we both have Cole Palmer as well as Lucas Imencha for Leeds getting penalties. Now, I would say both of these penalties, you could argue, were a bit questionable, but they do cancel each other out, so I'm not going to make a huge deal out of it. But yeah, coming into the second half, both of these midfields were playing quite tired. I think Leeds were going to be more affected by this because of a lack of depth. But honestly, as the game went on, it was Chelsea. It was the likes of Moises Caicedo, who I think earlier in the season was one of the most consistent players in the Premier League, really slipping today. Andre Santos, really not that great. Cole Palmer, I know he has a 7.5 rating on SofaScore, but that's being boosted by the fact he has 2 goal contributions. So, yeah, Chelsea, I was a little surprised, but Leeds really did, once again, as they do against a lot of stronger teams, actually dominate Chelsea in the midfield, at moments in the game at least, through their intensity. Obviously, Chelsea as well, the back line, they had some huge problems with physicality, and I think that is ultimately what causes Leeds to get that equalizer. In the lead up to that second goal, we had Jared Bogle basically holding up the ball, anchor play. There was like 4 or 5 Chelsea defenders all trying to get him, and then they all just bounce off him. They just can't touch the guy, and it leads to that second goal for Leeds. And from that point onward, Leeds were not really pushing for a winner. It was Chelsea that was pushing for a winner. But I have got to say, the reason Chelsea at the end of the day did not win this match, it falls on one player and one player alone. Cole Palmer. Because, man, this man, in like the 93rd, 94th, whatever it was minute, this guy, beautiful play by Chelsea to get to this point. He gets essentially an open goal, like 2 feet away from the net, and he somehow skies it. This was reminding me of Antoine Semenyo in that one Bournemouth game when he was handing out these incredible crosses, and I think another Bournemouth player, I can remember who, skied a ball from a similar position. That was an easier shot to score than to miss, unironically. I don't know if it's going to show it here if I click on him. Yeah, that shooting bar, I think, tells you all you need to know. And there's the shot right there, 0.78 extra. It should be a lot more. It literally opened. You see how close it is. And all this to say, man, Cole Palmer is one of the most gassed up players in the Premier League. And when he's good, Chelsea look amazing, and there are times when Chelsea fans see Cole Palmer ball out for a few games and think, "Oh, we're title contenders." But the reality is, this guy is just not consistent enough. At least not yet at a league level. He kind of reminds me right now of like a Marcus Rashford type. Not saying that that's going to be the career trajectory he goes on, but I'm telling, like, this matches like these are the reason why Chelsea have not been title contenders in the last few years. They're a young team. There's a lot of potential here, but I think this is a peak example of why there is a big three, or this season a big two in the Premier League, and Chelsea are not in it. All right, moving on, we have Everton vs Bournemouth, and I will say in this match, I had an Everton win. My co-host Swapnil said this was going to be a draw, and Bournemouth ended up winning this match. And once again, this is another one of those matches where in the first half, I was looking pretty good for me. I thought that Everton were on good track here. And for the first half, I would say it was pretty tight, but Everton do end up winning a penalty. Obviously, even Njai makes it. And it just does feel like one of those sort of Moyesian games where Everton maybe aren't always in control of the possession. They're not exactly dominating, but they're able to just control the game enough. They're just able to sort of neutralize the opposition, kind of slug it out enough. They can just eke out one of their casual, one of their low-scoring game victories. Because Everton is a squad that they probably have something like 28 or 29 goals, I think, in the Premier League season so far, and they're still upper mid-table, which, I mean, that just goes to show you exactly the style of football that Everton are playing. But in the second half, Bournemouth, once again, turn it up and show that, as I said in the match preview, that I think they're back to the form that they had at the start of the season. It was Antoine Semenyo at the start of the season when he was still at Bournemouth, who was carrying the Bournemouth offense. And last season, Antoine Semenyo was not as good as he was this year. But the one thing about Bournemouth was they had consistency in their front four. There would always be one or two players that would pop off any given game. There was no one player who you could just ignore. There's no one player that you could just focus your defensive energy on, because all of them are threats at times. And this is another good example of that. Obviously, Ryan, who was brought in as a replacement to the Brazilian winger for Antoine Semenyo, in his third straight game now, getting a goal contribution for Bournemouth through a goal, and then Amin Adli getting the ultimate winner. And it's very deserved for Bournemouth. In the second half, they were dominating large parts of that match. If anything, they could have gotten a third goal. In fact, that's the reason Jake O'Brien. Hang on, that's the reason Jake O'Brien gets the red card. He was basically doing a professional last man foul to prevent Bournemouth from scoring off a breakaway opportunity. And I gotta say, this also does show some weaknesses in the Everton back line as well. Obviously, Jared Branthwaite is back after a long-term injury, and he is somebody who is supposed to stabilize Everton aerially. But when it's a great cross in that leads to that second goal for Bournemouth, honestly, like a training ground goal, by the time Adley gets to the ball, it's basically an open header. There are still some serious weaknesses there for Everton. There's still some things that need to be addressed on set pieces, aerially speaking. I think Mikolenko completely missing in action a lot of the times defensively. Tarkowski, I mean, I've said a lot about this guy. I'm not going to just repeat myself over and over again. You know how I feel about Everton. Oh, also, Tierno Barry, almost forgot to mention, his rating, 5.8, totally deserved, because early in this match, in the first half, I believe, there is a free kick Everton take straight at Petrovic, but Petrovic, being a pretty terrible goalkeeper, fumbles it, lets it back out, and Tierno Barry gets basically a free one-on-one opportunity, which he completely screws up. Now, Barry, obviously, good technical ability, good hold of play, good distribution. We've praised parts of his play, but this is another example of, if he finishes that shot, Everton go up 1-0 early, they get the penalty. Could they have gone a point or even won this match? Hypothetically speaking. But obviously from that point forward, after Bournemouth get their two back, after Jake O'Brien gets that red card, Everton do kind of try to come back a little bit, but, being a man down, there's not exactly much you can do, and this game ends in a Bournemouth 2-1 victory. All right, moving on. We talked about Thomas Frank, and let's talk about Tottenham as a whole. Because once again, this is a horrible, horrible performance against Newcastle. All I gotta say is, with how inconsistent Newcastle's offense has been, especially away from home, losing to them at your home stadium is a little bit embarrassing. I'll have to be completely honest. And it does end 2-1. Scoreline makes it a little bit more flattering, but as per usual, as with these Newcastle games away from home, Newcastle, if we were just basing it off of chances alone, probably should have won this by like 2 or 3 goals minimum. Okay, so Tottenham coming into this match, they have a 6-point gap from relegation. West Ham is playing United. We'll talk about them a little bit more later. But again, back to that relegation thing. These are points that Tottenham needs to start winning because there's still 3 more matches that Christian Romero is going to be suspended for. And if it were not for a Benjamin Sesko last-minute goal, which again, we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, Tottenham could have been 3 points away from relegation at the end of this match week. So, you know, thank goodness they finally sacked Thomas Frank. We'll see if the replacement does any better. But anyways, going on to this match. Without Romero, as I predicted, Tottenham are just completely unable to progress the ball whatsoever. Dragusin slots in, and it's just a complete shit show. Conor Gallagher, pretty terrible today, and now he's injured. Odebear, also now injured. For whatever reason, Paulinho isn't starting in this match, which is completely dumbfounding to me, because when you're already missing that creative outlet, somebody to progress the ball, why are you putting on Yves Bissouma instead? It doesn't make any sense. Paulinho does get subbed on at the start of the second half, but in my opinion, he 100% should be starting this match. I need to point out the injuries, by the way, as well, because this means that Tottenham's, their curse of injuries, that never-ending bucket list, is just getting more and more long. As players that were injured at the start of the season, like Dominic Solanke, come back, inevitably, more injured players have to enter that sheet for Tottenham to keep things balanced, of course. One thing I did also say was, despite the weakness that Tottenham have in the midfield, I thought they might not get totally dominated, because Newcastle, as I've mentioned, Lewis Miley is injured, Joelinton is injured, so I thought maybe, you know, with those losses that Newcastle has, it's definitely shown in other matches recently, I thought maybe Newcastle wouldn't totally dominate the midfield today. But, you know, alas, they did. And by the time we reach halftime, it is 1-0. It probably should have been 2 or 3. Thiaw gets a scrappy goal. There were some very good opportunities for Newcastle. They just never seem to be able to finish away from home. I don't know what it is. They just seem so one-dimensional. Obviously, Wissa and Voltamati not playing here today. Aaron Gordon as the striker instead, but nothing's just working for them. And again, like, they're lucky they're playing Tottenham. They're lucky they're able to get the win here. And even then, they kind of escape with the victory, because Archie Gray gets, I believe, off of a corner, the equalizer, and it comes to Jacob Ramsey to eventually get the winner. Beautifully played in by Aaron Gordon, by the way. Aaron Gordon playing striker, but he was basically back out to his left, to his natural position. Dribbles a few Tottenham players, puts it on a plate, and it is a comfortable victory at the end of the day for Newcastle. All right, next match, we have West Ham vs Manchester United. The very, very much anticipated match, maybe the most anticipated match of this match week, because for West Ham, remember, they are 3 points behind Nottingham coming into this match. They are 6 points behind Tottenham and 6 points behind Leeds. And so this was an opportunity for them to try to climb their way out of the relegation zone. And as for Manchester United, I mean, everyone knows this by now, but this was the opportunity, the first time since the United Strand created his challenge, that Manchester United had won 4 games in a row. If Man United won this game, that man's career would finally be over after something like 500 days of not being able to cut his hair. But lo and behold, the football gods have a sense of humor, and that is not exactly what happened in this match. Since Michael Carrick has taken the helm, that is when those 4 straight wins have happened, and I have said that Michael Carrick has the mandate of heaven. And what I have to say here is, yes, he doesn't get the win. Yes, Manchester United played absolutely shit. It was the players' fault. I'm not going to blame Carrick for this match. The players were just absolutely sloppy today. But the fact that yet again, Benjamin Sesko, who I have to remind y'all, this guy was a terrible finisher for the first half of the season, all of a sudden is now multiple games multiple games in this streak, getting these last minute winners. In this case, a last minute equalizer. But you get my point here. Man, Michael Carrick. I don't know what's going on with him, but this guy has Manchester United just. He's sprinkling the dark magic. That's all I can say to explain how this went. But speaking of the match itself, I said that both of these teams are going to play relatively offensive. They're both going to play through the wings. And in particular, I said Jared Bowen was going to target Luke Shaw, and Somerville was going to target Diogo Dalot. And that's exactly what happened. I was 100% right. Because in the first half, Somerville cooks Dalot multiple times. He gets some shots off. Shen Lamens, by the way, gets a few crucial saves in that first half to keep it 0-0. But Dalot is getting absolutely cooked. Luke Shaw also getting absolutely cooked by Jared Bowen. Early on in the second half, it is Jared Bowen absolutely bodying Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw just completely misses a chance to clear the ball, and that obviously eventually leads to Jared Bowen putting in a perfect cross for basically a free goal for Thomas Zuzek. Yeah, I mean, I just gotta say, like, even in the midfield battle, Manchester United got basically completely dominated in this match. I expected some rotation to happen somewhere in the pitch. I didn't know where it was going to happen. But instead, for I think the 5th straight game in a row, or maybe like 3 or 4, Man United played the exact same lineup once again. And I'm not saying this isn't their best 11, but I said in the preview, Anc Casemiro does not have the ability to play 90 minutes in 2 matches in a row, 4 games from now. And for example, Casemiro does not even get substituted in this match. He drops the ball. Kobe Mainoo, fine. Bruno Fernandes, 7.2 rating, completely undeserved. He also drops the ball. Or at least he does not perform as the dynamic self that he normally is. And again, it's not to blame these players. There needs to be some more rotation happening on Manchester United. Part of that is obviously the injuries, lack of depth. But that is really something that's going to bite them. And this is an issue that obviously Manchester United have had to deal with a lot less than some other teams because they knocked themselves out of the Carabao early against Grimsby. They don't have any European football to contend with. And so this issue has been largely masked, but this is a match where it really shows. And honestly, after that first goal, this is also part of why I say this Benjamin Sesko equalizer is so miraculous. It is West Ham that looks like they're going to get a second, not Man United. And the only reason they don't is, first off, again, Saint Lamens, amazing performance. Backline does relatively well, but we have to go through the bench here. We have to go to the Manchester United substitutions and talk about Lenny Yoro. Because at least 2 times in the match, West Ham have what are basically guaranteed goal opportunities, and it is just Lenny Yoro who makes crazy last-ditch tackles to prevent that from happening. Him and the backline and Shane Lamens kept them in this match. And this is another performance where, like, again, so I don't mean to bring up old news, but like if Andre Onana was in net, West Ham win this match. At least 2-1. Maybe 2-0, because maybe United are just too deflated to even get the equalizer. But yeah, I mean, that's what it is. I would also say, yeah, not really long stretches of midfield possession for either squad. Again, as I predicted, I did think we were going to see more goals out of this because of that. But again, questionable finishing from United. Not even questionable finishing, like an inability to turn all their attacking chances or all of their attacks into real chances. West Ham, some questionable finishing, some good saves from Lamens as well. But yeah, 1-1 draw. If I'm West Ham, I mean, obviously I'm disappointed because you could have easily won this match, and that would put you in a great position for getting out of the relegation zone. Also, it would have prolonged their run. But again, this is not a bad performance for either side. Man United, they dropped points, which obviously is not great for the UCL race, but so did Chelsea. So it's not exactly the end of the world. But moving on, we have now going into today's matches, Aston Villa, and this is a huge match for Aston Villa because yesterday, as I just showed, Chelsea and Man United dropped points, and those are the 2 biggest contenders to taking away Villa's top 4, aka UCL spot. So Villa have the opportunity to take advantage of that and get a win and put themselves, if I can just click on the standings here, 5 points clear of United, 6 points clear of Chelsea. And they capitalize. Good for them. But what I will say is this is yet again one of those performances from Villa, and we've seen this so many times this season, where Villa don't dominate. They don't even play particularly well, But Unai Emery ends up finding a way to make sure this side wins by exactly 1 goal. And that's honestly the best way I can explain this match, because in the first half, man, this was absolutely dead. There were maybe a few shots on target from either side, but really nothing threatening. And in the second half, honestly, early on, if anybody was going to get the winner, it was Brighton. They had some decent opportunities, but once again, 2 matches in a row, it is the same guy that bails out Villa again. Last time against Bournemouth, bailing out Villa to make sure they get the draw. This time, bailing out Villa to make sure they get the win. It is Emi Martinez. And again, like, anyone who says that, oh, this guy's only a good goalkeeper for Argentina, oh, his club football is not good. I don't. Are we watching the same Emmy? Because this guy's consistently one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League. Another great performance here. Yeah, I mean, he basically keeps Villa in the game, and the longer it goes on, the more it does sort of feel like that it's gonna be Unai Emery dark magic, right? And that's essentially what ends up happening in this match. It is just a scrap. I think it's literally off of a corner, scrappy goal. Tyrone Mings is the one who ends up heading it home from the bench. It's a Jack Henschelwood own goal, which I think is a little questionable because I'm pretty sure it was going to go on target anyways. But whatever, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. Again, this is great for Villa. A good position for them to be in, because you have to remember they're still dealing with a lot of midfield injuries. No Tielemans, no Kamara, no Begin. And as for Brighton, I mean, I've been saying this, man. They have been on a really bad streak. There are now 6 games without a win in the table. And, I mean, they're not really in the relegation race. That's not what I'm concerned about. But they need to get out of this rut and fast, man, because it has been terrible from Brighton as of recent. And this was honestly a very winnable game. This is a very, very winnable game against Villa. And once again, missed opportunity for this Brighton side. All right, next up, we have Crystal Palace against Burnley. And this match, I don't know how to explain this one. I don't know how to begin to explain this one. Because yet again, I'm thinking for the first 40 minutes that I've hit this one spot on. Because not only did I say Crystal Palace were going to win this 2-0, I said, who did I shout out specifically? Jørgen Strand Larsen. And I said, I'm going to repeat what I said because I think it's true. Strand Larsen has been absolutely shit at Wolves this season, but that's not because he's a shit player. It's because his play style he's like a second striker. He relies on another offensive player that he can bounce off of. And that was Matheus Cunha last season. That's why Jørgen Strand Larsen was so great last season. And this year at Wolves, I mean, complete shortage of that, right? That player doesn't exist. But at Crystal Palace, remember, Ismaila Sarr is here. So Jørgen Strand Larsen, brilliant performance. I don't know how many shots he had. Maybe he only had 2. I mean, I could take a look here. Okay, he does get a 43rd minute shot miss that gets blocked. But still, a great performance from him finishing-wise. First goal, it is an assist. It is a beautiful assist from Adam Wharton. And again, this also makes me feel more confident in my prediction, right? Because I said one of the reasons that Palace are going to win this match is they're not necessarily going to dominate, but when you have a game-breaking player like Adam Wharton who can break down Burnley's block, like he did. Like, he basically neutralized the entire defense with that one pass. That was going to be the difference. And then in the second, and then later, we had Jefferson Lerma putting a cross in for Jørgen Strand Larsen. It's a good cross, and Jørgen Strand Larsen makes a diving header, a brilliant goal for a second. And I'm thinking, hold up. If you're Wolves right now, man, you got to be thinking, oh my goodness, how did I screw up this talent so bad? Because, again, 40 minutes into this match, Jørgen Strand Larsen is cooking. Adam Wharton is cooking. Palace are not dominating, but like I said, they have the dynamism in the midfield, and they're controlling the match, right? They're controlling the match. But lo and behold, by the time we actually do reach halftime, Burnley find themselves 3-2 up. And what makes this so crazy is Burnley has one of the worst attacks in the Premier League. I would argue the worst attack in the Premier League. And that reflects in the types of goals that they scored to reach this first half. The first goal, Hannibal Medri scores. That's a good goal, to be fair. I think Adam Wharton, some tired legs, which has been a consistent problem at Palace. I've talked about this before. Lack of depth in the midfield. Wharton and Kamada, at least when they're healthy, basically, even if it's like 2 games, 3 games you have to play in a week, it's going to be these two every time when they're available. And I think Hannibal Mejri loses his man, aka Adam Morton, and he does get in a very good goal for Burnley's 1 goal back. And you know what? At that point, fair enough. Burnley deserved goal 2-1. I think that's not unreasonable for how the game has gone so far. But no, because Jaden Anthony, who has at the start of the season he was pretty decent, scores an absolute banger, absolute unsavable. Dean Henderson just can't even react to it banger. And that was shocking to me because Burnley never scores those kinds of shots. In fact, I believe I said that this is one of these games where Burnley will have like 17 shots and one of them goes on target. And I thought that was just going to be one of those other chances where, because Burnley's is completely incapable of breaking down Palace's defense, they just have to take these long shots and they're not going to go in. But no, it does. And then they're not done yet. No, they're not done yet. Then they get a corner, and off of, once again, complete luck, this complete scrappy goal, that's the third. That's the third. And coming into the second half, Palace do keep fighting back, but it is going back to the finishing problems that they had earlier. Strand Larson gets targeted way more in the second half. And then there are still quite a few chances that Palace get. I think Kamada gets a good chance, LaCroix gets a good chance, Richards misses a few quarter chances later in the game, but I feel like after that third goal, Palace was completely deflated, man. And who wouldn't be? Because again, like, completely undeserved for them to be losing at halftime. And I don't want to sound like a Burnley hater, but I mean, this match is not going to help them survive relegation. I mean, they're cooked anyways, but they get a win and Palace kind of get dragged down for it. Okay, next match, we have Manchester City vs Fulham. And this match, once again, this is another time where I predicted exactly what's going to happen correctly here. But my scoreline was just a little bit off. I said Manchester City was going to win this one 3-1. And what was my reasoning? I said Manchester City have way too much firepower. However, they have weak fullbacks, and Fulham are a squad that can absolutely take advantage. And they did. They absolutely did take advantage. They had many good opportunities throughout this match. But it feels like this is yet another one of those matches where Manchester City, especially at home, so many times this season, they get a lot of great chances. Their opponent gets a lot of great chances, but somehow they win the match 3-0. And just to illustrate this point, if I go to the statistics page, actually Fulham has a higher expected goals tally than Manchester City. And I'm not going to say that Fulham had better chances than Man City. I don't agree with that, but that does go to show that this reminds me of that one Palace match that Manchester City won 3-0. A few months ago. I think Palace had the higher XG in that match too. But somehow Fulham just aren't able to do it. So yeah, I mean, going back to the first half, like I said, this complete domination, offensively speaking, for this Manchester City side. They were breaking Fulham in every way. It doesn't matter if it was a counterattack, if it was just regular breaking down the low block, putting in crosses. There was nothing this Fulham defense was able to do. And so yeah, completely deserved 3-0 by halftime in terms of the offense. But again, for Fulham, I don't understand what happened. Why they didn't score a goal here. Harry Wilson gets a great chance early on in the first half that he just completely scuffs. You had some other players, Raul Jimenez, I think, or was it Raul Jimenez or Emil Smith? I think it was Raul Jimenez, who basically gets a one-on-one chance with Donnarumma, and he just absolutely scuffs it in the first half as well. And Fulham do keep fighting in this match, but it just doesn't happen. This match, honestly, I would say it's another one where the scoreline, it sort of masquerades the defensive weaknesses that Manchester City have. But altogether, it's a pretty expected match, I would say. All right, moving on. Nottingham Forest against Wolves. And oh man, if you're Nottingham Forest, if I were a Forest fan, I would be absolutely fuming at this match, as any Forest fan has the right to. Because again, I'm going to go back to the statistics. 4 big chances, 35 total shots for Nottingham Forest, and they can't find the back of the net once. This honestly reminded me of that one Canada against Belgium game in the World Cup where Canada gets like 500 million shots, and because Thibaut Courtois is in net, we end up losing 1-0. Except because Wolves are Wolves, obviously they're not going to be able to score either. So, I mean, yeah, if there were any more evidence, if there needed to be any more proof to show how great Chris Wood's season was last year for Nottingham, I mean, this shows it for you because that's what happens when you lose your talisman, man, in the first half. Nottingham absolutely dominate. This was not like a typical Sean Dyche performance defensive turtle. They were just going all out. They were going all out at Wolves in that first half. You had Elliot Anderson putting in amazing crosses. You had Morgan Gibbs White just missing chances for no reason. You had Ola Aina getting involved with some good crosses as well. But yeah, I mean, for some reason, Nottingham's just completely unable to finish. Now, part of that, to be fair, is Jose Sa. And that 9.8 rating, fully justified for Jose Sa. Because this man got 10 saves. He had 10 saves in this match, and one of them was in like the 68th minute, something like that, or 68th or 78th, I don't remember exactly. Murado of Nottingham basically gets an open one-on-one goal opportunity. It's like similar to the one Cole Palmer got, except Murado's a miss. He hits it on target, and somehow Jose Sa makes an insane goal line clearance. He was reminding me of like prime Mexico Memo Ochoa goalkeeping performances. For those of you who know what I'm talking about. Yeah, completely diabolical. Wolves produced absolutely nothing, but Nottingham. I mean, this is the game you need to win if you're Nottingham, because again, West Ham get a draw against a much stronger team, and they're in jeopardy. They're only 3 points ahead, and which team is on better form? It is by far West Ham. Honestly, I would say the only reason why I don't think there's more worry about Nottingham getting relegated is just the sheer fact that they happen to be coached by Sean Dyche, who just for whatever reason has like divine protection to never get relegated. But if we were talking from a pure, what form are these teams on? How are they looking? There's a lot of cause for concern, I think, for Nottingham Forest. But that brings us to the last match of this match week, and that is Sunderland against Liverpool. This is one where both me and Swapno, who is a Liverpool fan, said this is going to be a 1-1 draw because Sunderland, they are the one team you don't want to play at home. Up to this point, until this match, Sunderland at the Stadium of Light were undefeated in the Premier League, which honestly, sad that it ended here, but that being able to sustain that for 26 match weeks in the Premier League when you're a newly promoted side, hats off to Sunderland. That's very impressive. But today it's that Sunderland at home that you expect to see. We did not see it at all because Habib Diarra, Trey Hume, Enzo Lefebvre, the guys who you expect to be those physicality monsters at the Stadium of Light, they were all kind of quiet today. Even Brian Brobby, their star striker, who his biggest asset is his physicality, basically a no-show. I think a 5.9 rating, honestly, is a little harsh. I mean, he wasn't terrible, but I think it's fair to say he was a non-factor. I think that's fair to say. So yeah, in a match where you expect Sunderland to be physically dominant, I mean, how many teams has Sunderland been able to get a draw or a win against at home through their physical dominance? That just wasn't on display today. It wasn't here. And despite that, for the first half, I thought maybe Sunderland were going to be able to get a draw anyways, because Liverpool, 10 shots in the first half, several great opportunities, but somehow, some way, they just can't find the back of the net. We had Florian Wirtz get multiple great opportunities in the first half. He can't score. Ekitike gets a great chance in the first half. He can't score. Virgil van Dijk misses a header in the first half, as per usual. Virgil van Dijk, obligatory missed header per game. He doesn't score. And at that point, I'm thinking, right, is the Sunderland home buff a Liverpool debuff in this match? Because we do know, Sunderland have shown this time and time again, that the longer it stays 0-0, the longer you're unable to break them down at home, the more jeopardy you are in. So in the second half, I was expecting Sunderland to go in guns blazing, to absolutely blitz them for physicality and scrape by a goal. But that's not exactly what happened. That has not happened at all. Because that is not what happened at all. Because in the second half, Liverpool keep attacking, and eventually it is a own goal, or I guess a Virgil van Dijk goal, but a goal that's deflected that gets Liverpool the lead. And to quote my co-host Swapno, who was also watching this match, he texted me and he said, 2 close Virgil shots in the first half, and we get the lead off an own goal. And if that isn't indicative of how Liverpool's season has been this year, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. And Sunderland, they did try to come back into this match in the second half. They were never particularly close to scoring. And again, if anything, it's Liverpool, who arguably shouldn't have gotten a second. Because Ekitike misses a few chances. I don't know. He's been slipping recently. Mo Salah misses a few chances because he's washed. And Sunderland are honestly altogether a little lucky that they only end up conceding one goal, and that is the way this match ended. Oh, one other thing I have to mention, I think. Wataru ended up getting injured at right back. I don't know what it is with Liverpool at right backs this season. I don't know if there's like the Trent Alexander-Arnold curse, but they are dropping like flies. Slot thought he could escape having to play Sobo at right back. Nah, you're cursed with that. Sobo is cursed with playing out of position for the rest of the season now, because I don't even know who's left. Is Joe Gomez fit? I don't even know, but it's dire. It is dire for Liverpool. And just before we end off here, I'm just going to take a quick gander at the table, if you don't mind. Arsenal obviously have a game in hand. That is going to be against Brentford. Both Sunderland and I have Arsenal winning this match. I think they should be able to, despite the fact that Brentford have been on great form recently and they are a strong team at home. But if I'm Arsenal, I'm still going to be a little bit concerned, because a few weeks ago we were talking about maybe Manchester City dropping out of the title race and it being over completely. But Man City got another win here. The pressure is continuing to be piled on Arsenal. They have to keep winning these matches. I still think they will. I still don't think City pose that much of a threat to the Premier League, but they are at least going to keep this competitive, which is very nice. Liverpool keeping their hopes of making the UCL competitive with a win here as Man United and Chelsea drop points. And just one final quick look at the relegation battle. I would say at this point, in my personal opinion, I don't see like a Palace or Brighton dropping that low. I think Leeds have shown time and time again. I mean, at one point, they looked destined for relegation. But ever since those tactical adjustments that Daniel Farke made in like December, November, they've just been flying ever since. I'm very confident in Leeds. And so I would say Burnley are out. Wolves are out. It's Tottenham, Forest, or West Ham. One of them is going to take the last spot. They're fighting to not be the third team relegated. And the way it's going right now, that could go down to the wire. So, that's it for our Premier League reaction. Obviously, I'm not going to wait for the Arsenal match, because I don't want to just wait, another day just to give one more reaction. And also, because there's a bit of a break between this match week and the next one, Swapno and I are probably going to drop something in between then, maybe just some content talking about the league generally. We'll see. But we are going to do some more coverage. But that's about it. That is going to be it for my match week predictions. So if you like this kind of content, if you want to see us do more of this, like, subscribe, help us out in the algorithm, of course. And see ya.